that okay? Yeah. It feels a little tall. Good morning. Wow, this is as silent as I've ever heard this group. Good morning again. I'm Cynthia Cherry, President and CEO of the International Leadership Association. And what a powerful way for us to start our event last night at the center with the march down to the center. Wasn't that amazing? Right? I want to thank Janet again and the planning committee and the staff for all of the great work that they're doing. And the drum corps was Janet's idea that meted us when we got to the center. And I'm sure I saw some of you dancing there, and we've also had somebody recommend that we should have them do a workshop with us in the future so we could all learn how to dance as well as they did. They were fabulous, right? I saw there are 1,280 of us here today from 35 countries. I think about 1,000 of you were there and dancing last night. I hope you also enjoyed Danny Roberts, who performed for us this morning. He's a longtime ILA member. He has been, and many of you know him as an administrator, as a teacher, as an author. Well, he's also an emerging musician. And for those of you who have been here before and for new individuals, we often start our events with music because music is such a powerful way to convey meaning and emotion. If you think about it, the emotions that it conjures up are love and joy, and it also conjures up those emotions of anger and angst and anguish, right? We can all think of times when music really touched us to our very soul. There's a piece that Denny played at the very end, and I'm sure since so many of you were talking, you didn't hear it, but I'm going to ask him to play a few pieces of it, and that final piece was Prelude. And if you listen, he's going to just do a few stanzas of the beginning, which is this simple melody, which the entire piece is built upon. So Danny, if you would do just a few stanzas, please. Thank you. And then, he's going to play one more segment for you, because then this musical piece moves into a segment that is much more searching and discordant and very dissonant. And then it will wander back into, and then it will crescendo, and then it will move back into this melody. So I just want you to listen to this and feel the music. Thank you, Denny. In that piece, there's a melody, and it is this sequence of very harmonized, beautiful notes. But it's followed by some notes that are very turbulent and discordant music of sounds, the cacophony of music. And you really need both. If you think of leadership as a metaphor. When we engage in leadership at times, it may appear very simple, right? But often it becomes much more complicated and unclear. We may experience harmony in our leadership work, and we often also feel the dissonance and the cacophony in leadership. This is not unusual. We live in very turbulent times in this environment today. Reflecting on our own experience, we find meaning in both the harmony and the cacophony. Leadership embodies both. We may realize at times that when we think everything is very simple, in essence, when we start thinking about it again, the cacophony and the dissonance creates greater complexity, and it also brings greater depth and richness and elegance to what we originally thought or experienced. So for this next few days at this conference, I hope that you embrace both the melody and the cacophony of leadership in the research that's being talked about, in the practice, in the workshops, in the experiences, but think about both. And I also hope that we get beyond this illusion of deifying the word leadership. Because leadership, the study, the practice, the teaching, it's hard work. The nature of leadership and its role has intensified and has become much more complex with the increasing international interaction among people, among organizations, and among nation states. Globalization imposes a new demand on what we expect and should expect from leadership. You know, this past year, the World Economic Forum in Davos cited a lack of leadership as one of the major crises of the world today. And we, at this conference, have to ask ourselves why. Right? And perhaps it's because as an international community, we have largely failed to express and address the global issues we are facing today. There are many historians, political theorists, economists, environmentalists who would argue that the globalizing of our world has the capability of changing the course of the human journey on this planet. Think of the political realities that are unfolding in front of our very eyes all over the world. Think about the violence and the terrorism that continues to fester and grow. And think about the progressive destabilization of the global environment. This danger may be more gradual, but it is relentlessly cumulative. As guests on this planet, we are on the verge of destroying where we live. And there are no boundaries to the air we breathe, the dirt we till, and the water that we drink. We are all in this together. There's a quote by Albert Einstein that I think is so descriptive of today. And he said, I quote, "The significant problems we face cannot be solved at the same level of thinking we were at when we created them," end quote. And I would argue that nor can these problems be solved with the same leadership we had at the times we created them. As societies, we are more and more influenced by political and social and economic and technological transactions across borders. Development and change is influencing not only internally what we do, but also by individuals interacting across organizations, across institutions, and across countries. It creates the first semblance of a global civilization. It connects the diverse cultures within and across all continents. Modern civilization is beneficial in many, many ways, and in other ways it creates complex problems. We live in a time between paradigms of civilization. It is a time of stark contrasts and accelerated evolution in which some want to hold on to the past and on to the familiar, and some even want to return to the past. I know our European colleagues are thinking Brexit as I said those words. Yet what is needed is fundamental change towards co-creating ways of living together in our increasingly interdependent global future. So we need to embrace the melody and the cacophony of leadership. The system that we call the economy, right, the way we extract and produce, transport and consume, dominates our global society. And it is changing from the industrial era, which had a focus on diminishing our natural capital, to the age of the knowledge economy, which has us embrace all forms of capital: financial, industrial, human, environmental. A global economy which involves reframing business to be profitable and sustainable. In governance, it requires collaborative efforts between different sectors, the civil society, governance, and business. Globalization is impacting us today in ways we know and in ways we don't know. What we know is that globalization, post-World War II, saw the beginnings of a new governance structure, or the need for new governance structures for a global economy. What we know is that globalization is changing expectations and creating new opportunities and new challenges for growth. What we know is there's no going back. And we need to embrace the melody and the cacophony of a global economy and global leadership. So for too many of us, global simply means projecting our own values and beliefs on the world around us, applying those same perspectives to a larger geographic scale. Right? And we know that global is more than just geography. It is also cultural in terms of people, and intellectual reach in terms of a global mindset and skill set. So being global requires hearing and learning from each other, and to find solutions for our shared humanity, and to support our shared sustainability. There is no single researcher, speaker from any one nation or culture, profession or sector that can possibly hope to capture the complexity of this changing pattern of leadership today. We need each other to collectively assemble the montage. We need to ask ourselves, each and every one of us here today, what does it mean to think and act globally? If you think about what is happening in the world today, there is a new form of a global society that is emerging that requires all of us to think and act globally. The study of global leadership is a fairly new way to study leadership. And there are a number of studies like the Globe Project that was talked about here at ILA in prior conferences. And there are others, study on global literacies. And of the studies that are out there, there is one concept that keeps coming up in different terms, but I would use the term global acumen, which is the understanding, the experience, and the insights of working, living, and leading in a global society. Because today's leadership requires an understanding of multiple and diverse cultures, engaging and influencing those different from ourselves, and searching out diverse perspectives. We need to find ways to expand our understanding and our ways of thinking and doing, to influence and work with individuals that are unlike ourselves. Many of us know that, but we either avoid it or we're struggling to develop that global understanding. Because we may be more connected, but that does not mean that we are ready and well-versed in the diversity of the world. The world may be flat in terms of technology and interconnectivity, but it is still quite bumpy in the areas in the sense that people in different organizations in different areas of the world work in very different ways. So we need to find ways to advocate for worldviews that focus on the whole and bridge across countries and cultures and disciplines and sectors. And we need to explore the relationship between the global and the local. And we need to seek out pragmatic and inspired solutions. The International Association, the ILA, the ILA, the ILA, wherever you're from, is one of the best ways to engage with others different from ourselves, from all over the world, from different sectors and different disciplines. But we're all focused on the study, the practice, and the teaching of leadership. We have a powerful core purpose in the work that we are doing, and we're here to learn from each other. It's through our collective human capital that we do our best work in leadership. The richness of our learning is in the searching together and learning in this collective space over the next few days, bringing together our diverse voices and our different voices. In an a cappella group, it is important and essential that each and every voice is heard, right, in creating the harmony and the dissonance so that every voice is heard. Well, we create our music. We set the tempo. We can change the lyrics. And there is an urgency to our work that we are doing, and it's evident all over the world. And so at this ILA conference on the dynamics of inclusive leadership, may each of us lift our batons, increase our tempo, and continue to do this very important work around the study and the practice of leadership. Thank you so much. Now I have the great pleasure of doing one of my favorite things at the ILA conference, and that is that we celebrate the voices of those who have given so much to this association. And so the Leadership Legacy Program is one of the ways that the ILA celebrates those individuals who have helped to write our story, to create our music so far, and to weave our past, present, and future together. It is our way of recognizing and celebrating those who have made significant contributions to the field of leadership. So at the 2008 conference, we honored the inaugural class of 6 individuals with the ILA Lifetime Achievement Award. And those recipients were Bernie Bass, Warren Bennis, James McGregor Burns, who's one of our founders, Frances Hesselbein, Manfred Ketz de Vries, and Joe Rost. Since that 2008 conference, we have honored 20 individuals with the Lifetime Achievement Award, as noted in the following slides. Last year, we had the distinct honor of recognizing 3 colleagues with the Lifetime Achievement Award, Boaz Shamir, and 2 of our founding mothers, Georgia Sorensen and Lorraine Matuzak. And now it's our extreme pleasure in 2016 to honor 4 individuals with the Lifetime Achievement Award. 2 of them will be honored this morning and the other 2 tomorrow morning. And I would like to begin with Robert Greenleaf. Many of you read Robert Greenleaf's seminal piece, The Servant as Leader. Now, it must have sounded like an oxymoron. It did to me when I read it. Although many religious traditions held notions of the leader as servant, the modern leadership model at that time was one of command and control. Oh, how the world has changed. Not. Greenleaf's leap to servant leadership is an example of breakthrough thinking at its best at its time. Before he retired from AT&T in 1964, he was well known for his creative connections using literary material and leadership development programs. He would bring together philosophers and psychologists and theologians to converse with the executives in AT&T. He was ahead of his time in terms of being very interdisciplinary. He was instrumental also at AT&T in pushing against the boundaries of color and gender. In the years since that seminal essay, servant leadership has been explored and developed by researchers and practitioners around the world. There are numerous articles, books, publications, conferences, journals that have sprung up because of Greenleaf's deep thinking and very forward thinking. Spearheaded now by the Robert K. Greenleaf Center for Servant Leadership, which is located in Indianapolis, Indiana, and was founded by Greenleaf in 1964. There's an entire movement that is devoted to exploring servant leadership. and it has grown, building on this theory and practice model. Now, the Greenleaf Center has been an enthusiastic supporter of the ILA over the years, and Larry Spears, one of the former executive directors of the Greenleaf Center, served on the ILA board at one time. Today, we have the honor of having the Greenleaf board here at the ILA conference, along with the present executive director, Pat Felicchio. Could I have the Greenleaf board please stand, and could I have Pat come forward and accept Bob's award on behalf of his family and the Greenleaf board? Oh, I look so tall up here. Thank you. So on behalf of the ILA and the Legacy Committee, it is our honor to induct Robert Greenleaf into the ILA Virtual Hall of Fame as a luminary of the leadership profession with the ILA Lifetime Achievement Award. Let's give him one more. If Sandra Pert, the Dean of the Jepson School of Leadership, would please escort Gil Hickman to the stage. Danny, we should be having you play music as this is happening. Compelling common purpose. Those three words are the core of Gil Robinson Hickman's work in leadership studies. Her life and her research. Compelling common purpose. As one of the inaugural faculty members of the Jepson School of Leadership Studies, one of the first institutions in the world with a multidisciplinary faculty devoted to the study of leadership, Gil joined forces with her colleagues to build the program from the ground up. Now, Gil was a former administrator, so she knew how to do this hard work. And that hard work included not only the development of new syllabi, lessons, and lectures from scratch, they also had to write their own textbooks. And from that process, Gil's own publications, there are a number of noted ones that are in their fifth edition, third edition, fourth coming out soon, leading organizations, perspectives for a new era, and leading change in multiple contexts. They've become the standards in the field. Jepson was not the first place that Gil experienced a compelling common purpose. Growing up in Birmingham, Alabama during the civil rights era, she experienced the power of people coming together in a common cause to advance the work of change. She witnessed the outcomes of people of all ages voluntarily giving of themselves to challenge segregation. And Gil credits this experience with fueling her lifelong passion for collective work and co-creative partnerships. And building from practice into theory, Gil's recent co-creative, co-authored book with Georgia Sorensen, Invisible Leadership, fleshes out this theory and argues that dedication to a compelling common purpose is the motivating force in leadership. Retired now from Jepson, her work continues to examine the interplay between purpose and leadership. Gil and I started out in this leadership work in the ILA together, and we started out as professional colleagues. We have become lifelong friends. She is a lifelong member of the ILA, and now we're going to bestow on her a lifelong membership. And I really treasure her as a professional colleague and as a dear, dear friend. And so, Sandra, you would bestow. Gil, on behalf of the ILA and the Legacy Committee, it is our honor to induct you into the ILA Virtual Hall of Fame as a luminary of the leadership profession with the ILA Lifetime Achievement Award.
Thank you so much. Well, you stole a little bit of what I was going to say, Cynthia, but I am very humbled by this award. It's something that I certainly did not anticipate, and so it is very humbling to receive this. It has been such a privilege for me to contribute to the development of the Jepson School and the field of leadership studies, as well as the ILA. I've been there from the beginning, so I guess that makes me old, but it's been such a pleasure to work with all of the people in ILA and with my colleagues. And I realize in hindsight, as Cynthia said, that when I first read the original purpose of the Jepson School, which states, "The Jepson School develops people who understand the moral responsibilities of leadership and who are prepared to exercise leadership in service to society," that it intuitively appealed to the kind of leadership I witnessed as a young child in the civil rights era in Birmingham, Alabama. The experience is the reason, just like Cynthia said, that I feel so strongly about the power of collective and shared leadership to make a difference in organizations and in society. I believe the civil rights experience influenced my passion for leadership studies even more than my study of leadership or the experience of leadership roles. I would like to thank the ILA and my colleagues and friends at the Jepson School, who are my other family. If you guys would stand up, please. They're the reason that I can do all of this, because we started and worked together, and this award really belongs to them as well. James McGregor Burns and Georgia Sorensen also are the reason why I have been very engaged in leadership studies. They've been inclusive. The Jepson School, ILA, and Burns and Georgia have been inclusive and represent what inclusiveness stands for. They open the doors as wide as possible and embrace me with open arms in the field of leadership. That is what inclusiveness really is. On a personal note, I want to recognize and thank all my family and friends on whose shoulders I stand every day. And my family came out to be with me. Would you guys wave if you don't want to? Including my husband and my mom. So once again, thank you for allowing me to be a part of this wonderful leadership journey. I'm not finished. I'm still going ahead. And it has been just my pleasure. Thank you so much.
So if we could have one more round of applause for Gil Hickman and for Bob Greenleaf, please. I now have the opportunity to do another one of my favorite things, and that's to introduce our keynote speaker for this morning, A.J. Bramdio. A.J. is the African Union ambassador to the European Union. He grew up in Durban, South Africa, and today he splits his time between his home in Africa, South Africa, and his work, which has him living in Brussels. Growing up, he was an activist. He was involved in student politics and community organizing. and actively engaged in the struggles to end apartheid, which brought him into the South African Diplomatic Corps in 1995. So these last 21 years, he has worked in senior positions of leadership in the creation of democratic governance and inclusive economic development in South Africa. In his present role as ambassador, he works tirelessly in searching and involving and ensuring that the African voice carries weight in Europe, in the United Nations, and in global conversations around peace, security, and the complex problem of refugee migration. But before 1995, he was a teacher. He taught secondary school in South Africa. And he also taught for a year in Virginia. And AJ and his wife, and this was 26 years ago, they haven't been back to the States, and this is the first time back, and we're so pleased that our invitation allowed AJ and his wife Anju to come back. And after this conference, they're going to go to DC and to Virginia to go back to the place where he taught secondary school. I met AJ and Anju through one of the topical conferences that the ILA did in The Hague. And we had dinner together, and it was a delightful dinner. So when I was back in Brussels, I invited them out to dinner, and they refused. But instead, they graciously said, no, we don't want you to take us to dinner. We want you to come to our home for dinner. And so I went to their home to dinner, but I was rude. I said, AJ and Anju, I have a friend with me, Gail Hickman. Can I bring her along? And of course, Anju, I don't know if AJ did, but I know Anju said, absolutely. And Gil and I were guests with AJ and Anju at their home in Brussels. And we spent the most wonderful evening talking about South Africa and apartheid and the South and segregation. It was a phenomenal conversation all around breaking bread together and talking about its impact at that time and today. And at that point, I knew it was important for us to have AJ Bramdio come and talk about leadership and his experiences and his thoughts, and to reflect with us together on global leadership and the importance of the work today. So with that, Ambassador AJ Bramdio.
It's not as thick as it may seem. I just love a captive audience, so shut the doors, please. Well, very good morning to you all. I'm really honored and humbled to be standing before you and delivering a keynote address. Indeed, Cynthia does me, I don't know, she flatters me. She has been extremely kind in her remarks, so thank you for those remarks and introductions, Cynthia. Let me acknowledge at the outset the great work that the ILA is doing, and to say that the board members, the members of ILA, the staff, the volunteers, your work does not go unnoticed. So let's hope that the impact of ILA shall increase with time. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I was told by a very reliable source that ILA members have the broadest minds and are most accepting of all points of view that may be expressed at this conference. So I am assured that I shall not be on the receiving end of any tomatoes and eggs By the way, the same reliable source also had a sign saying, "I was the one who spoke of weapons of mass destruction." Anyway, let me also congratulate the recipients of the Lifetime Achievement Awards and say that it is well deserved. Gail, I'm sure your family is extremely proud as well. As Cynthia mentioned, my wife and I are extremely happy to be amongst you, to be in the United States. And after 26 years, had Cynthia not invited us, we probably don't know when we would have come to these shores. The venue and the city for this conference, of course, is historic and at the same time evokes a lot of emotions in me because of the history that I come from as well. And yesterday, we had the opportunity in the morning to go down to the Civil Rights Center, and of course, it brought back so many memories. Many of them not so pleasant, but it also reminded us of the journey that we as human beings have walked, and the progress we've made, and the work that still remains to be done. We certainly ought to remember the history that